As my friend Dr. Jha shared with us, this is a complex situation. You see this particular patient who is in front of you. He was a young man of 32 years who came walking to the hospital with toxic fumes inhalation. Went on ventilator, went on CRRT, was on ECMO, and also had an endotoxin filter, as you can see. So this patient walked home after 2 weeks, coming off all the supports. So if somebody needs a success story like this, apart from our knowledge for dialyzing a patient or treating them in all the other aspects, nutritional management is also equally important. You see this patient post CABG, he is on a cycler peritoneal dialysis. So there can be various modalities of what you do to a patient when a patient comes under your care in the ICU. Our present knowledge is very clear. There are a lot of metabolic changes in AKI, which lead to increased resistance to anabolic signals and insulin, very high stress hyperglycemia, and increased levels of inflammatory mediators. Now, these contribute to a particular internal milieu, what we now understand as malnutrition, which is peculiar to a critical care patient with AKI. So we know what leads to this malnutrition, the premorbid conditions the patient has, severity of the disease, including the stage of AKI, and the process of care, what you and I do to the patient when the patient is in the hospital. We also know what it results in. We know that it results in very low serum albumin. We know it results in loss of weight, loss of body fat, increased mortality, increased hospitalizations, and also permanently changing the vasculature of the patient, even though there was only a single episode of AKI. So when you talk of malnutrition in kidney disease, we now know there is a significant component of inflammation and increased energy expenditure, stress hyperglycemia, and negative nitrogen balance. So all this together is now coined into a term called as protein energy wasting. So it is a term proposed to refer to the combination of negative metabolic consequences of acute loss of kidney disease on nutritional status. This is important understanding for you and me who are taking care of patients in the ICUs, because when a patient gets into the hospital or the ICU, the primary diagnosis could be a neurological reason or a gastrointestinal or an orthopedic reason. But the outcomes and the mortality are determined by whether this patient had AKI, and if he or she had AKI, the severity of AKI. The reason for this is what happens to the protoplasm with one episode of AKI. So this is a study which was looked at patients who had a single episode of AKI, followed up for 2 years. And during this time of 2 years, they behaved very differently. They died more often. They came back to hospital more often. They had more infections. So one episode of AKI changes the internal milieu. And we now know that there is a distant effect of AKI on all the other organs. And we also know what are those inflammatory mediators which actually change the other organ function. In other words, we know that when you have a patient with AKI, it is not a single organ disease, it's a multi-organ disease, and it continues to be so for a very long time after the AKI episode is over. And the present understanding is whatever we discuss now, the protein energy wasting syndrome is one of the main reasons for the internal inflammation and change in the internal milieu. My friend Dr. Jha spent some time on the details. So we have a definition for protein energy wasting, and it includes biochemical, body composition, and dietary intake. I don't want to go into the details for lack of time. So we understand now when you have a patient with acute kidney injury and a protein energy wasting, the comorbidities determine, they contribute to this. The critical care illness determine and contribute to this. And also the acute kidney injury by retention of uremic toxins and inflammatory mediators, fluid retention, gut edema, and of course, nutrient losses when the patient is on dialysis. So can we avoid protein energy wasting in AKI is the question. By our small discussion so far, we know the worsening nutritional status is a result of many mechanisms, inflammatory process and catabolic factors. It is not a direct effect of nutrient intake. So nutrition can only improve the protein and energy balance, possibly change the protein synthesis, but cannot suppress critical care illness induced catabolism fully. So how do we approach diet in AKD in our patients? You have to look at the caloric intake, you have to look at the protein intake, salt and water, micronutrients, which includes vitamins and minerals, and also the renal minerals, which includes potassium and phosphorus. There was some discussion on this in the previous session. So how much calorie do we give? Though energy expenditure is higher during critical illness, but there is enough knowledge now and data to support underfeeding is not going to help your patient outcomes. Neither overfeeding is not going to help your patient outcomes. So how much calories do we give? So we need to know some idea about resting energy expenditure, and based on that, you want to give the calories. There have been a lot of data about, even from India, some elegant studies which talked about calculating what the patient needs vis-a-vis energy is concerned. But I should mention, most of us do not do this, though there is a strong data to say the gold standard is indirect calorimetry. I can give you several excuses why we would not do it in our patient bedside. Most of us are comfortable, though the recommendations talk about indirect calorimetry, we are comfortable moving away from this formulae and going on to what is called as a weight-based consensus. In the absence of indirect calorimetry, the published predictive equation or simplistic weight-based equation of 25 to 30 kilocalories per kg per day can be used to determine the energy requirements. And that is what most of us do in our patients in a day-to-day basis. So we need to understand in the early time and the late time or late phase, the first 1 or 2 days, we call it as acute phase, early period, whereas 3 to 7 days, we call it as acute phase, late period. And after 7 days, we call it as a rehabilitating phase or a chronic phase. So in the first 1 or 2 days, it is suggested to give you hypocaloric nutrition in the early phase of illness, and then progressing slowly to 80 to 100% of the energy expenditure. So if you look at simple 25 to 30 calories per day, you can start off in the beginning with less, 20 to 25, and then go on from 25 to 30 kilocalories per kg per day. There is no evidence that caloric target should be different in AKI patients with or without RRT. But in patients with CRRT, please note, if you are using citrate, that can contribute to your calories. Similarly, I showed you a patient on PD, the dextrose can contribute to calories. So you need to take this into consideration. So this is a paper from Osterman, and we will go back to her every few slides. So the recommendation is in patients with AKI, start at 20 to 30 kilocalories per kg per day in the first 1 or 2 days, and then step up a little more. And there is no reason to have it any different from other ICU patients. So the level of evidence is 5, which is expert opinion without explicit critical appraisal. Most of the nutritional recommendations would be fitting into this. So let me show you the data from Renal study, which showed that among all the 1,456 patients who were in the study, when they looked at a stable caloric intake, this was achieved only 4 to 5 days after randomization. And the mean the calorie intake daily was 11 kilocalories per kg per day. I'm talking of the best of the centers in the world, and this is what the facts were. So it is important for you and me to look at how much calories and protein we are giving to our patients. Coming to how much protein to give. Too much is not good, too less is not good. We already talked about it. And the main reason for this is when you think that you don't want much urea generation and give less protein, you actually end up generating more urea because you are breaking down the patient's muscle mass. Similarly, if you give more protein, you are again increasing the urea production. So there is some sort of a consensus, even if you look across all the recommendations from various societies, starting off at 1.2 and a maximum of 2 grams per kg per day. So if you look at the Aspen, they suggest protein of 1.2 to 2 grams per kg actual body weight per day, and no need to consider a special formulation unless electrolyte abnormalities are present in the patient. In those who are on a dialytic modality, the recommendations do talk of increasing the protein intake by 0.2 grams per kg per day. So what started off as 1.5 grams per kg could go up to 2, but categorically, there is no benefit of protein to be more than 2.5 grams per kg per day. The main thing that you and I should understand is protein should not be restricted in patients with renal insufficiency as a means to avoid delay in initiating dialysis therapy, because this has poor outcomes. Going back to Marley's recommendations, in patients with AKI, you can start off with 1.3 grams per kg per day. In critically ill patients, 1.5 grams per kg per day. Those who are on dialytic modality, this can be increased by supplementing another 0.2 grams per kg per day, maximum going up to 2 grams per kg per day. So again, looking at the renal study, which is again our nephro patients with kidney injury, the dietary protein intake daily was as low as 0.5 grams per kg per day. So this emphasizes to us, you and I should spend some time, just like you write a dialysis prescription, a nutritional prescription, interacting with the intensivist and the dietitian, ensure there is a default prescription of protein and a default prescription of calorie to your patients. What about vitamins and trace elements? Supplementing micronutrients during a RRT are important. This is again Marley's paper, Marley's group, which published it. And this is the rationale for this is at least two different studies. One is from Emory, which looked at 75 patients. They found loss or decrease in micronutrients in several of patients, especially if they were on dialysis. So in a way to conclude, there is no single nutritional tool sensitive or specific enough to look at the non-nutritional factors influence in our patients, because they have many other things like inflammation and fluid overload. But one of the main things you and I need to go home today with an understanding is, you have a patient with AKI, it is the background comorbidities and the nutritional status which has brought that patient to you. There is a significant understanding the earlier nutritional status. When a patient comes into ICU in front of you, they already are malnourished. And when you take this patient during the next 7 days of treatment of AKI in the ICU, what you do to this patient, including the calorie and protein intake, determines the outcomes not only short term but also long term. I'm going to switch gears a little and talk about progression of AKI to CKD. And many of us now fully understand there is no episode of AKI which fully recovers, partly because we are not taking care of all the due processes, including nutrition, to these patients. If you look at the disease modifiers of AKI progression to CKD, one of the things which is important is the serum albumin of the patient determines the outcomes of recovery of the kidney. So if a serum albumin is very low during the process of care of AKI, or when you are dialyzing these patients, that is known to be an independent risk factor for kidney not recovering and going into a chronic kidney disease. Most of us now understand this model of progression to AKI to CKD, one insult, second insult, third insult, but it's the nutritional status pre-admission during the process of care that determines the outcomes to many of these people. At least there is a significant contribution of nutritional status to the outcomes. So we understand today AKI, then which is up to 7 days, AKD, which is up to 90 days, overlapping with onset of CKD. Most of our patients go on to this, and my single important job today would be to draw attention to the fact we need to give importance to nutrition as much as we give to antibiotics or dialytic prescription, because it determines the outcomes of our patients. Let me stop with just mentioning these are the ASPEN guidelines in 2016, and I'll be repeating. All patients are at risk of malnutrition if they stay for more than 48 hours. Start enteral nutrition after initial stabilization unless there is a specific contraindication. Aim for 20 to 25 as a default prescription of calories, and 1.2 to 2 grams as a default prescription of protein in all our patients. In those who are on some form of replacement, renal replacement, consider another 0.2 grams per kg per day additional protein to be given. do determine what is the micronutrients that have to be given to these patients. They do suggest avoiding enteral nutrition only if there is a hemodynamic compromise with stiff inotropic requirement is there. This is true with many other societies also. It will be almost like repeating the whole thing. So the take-home message would be, a patient comes to you, please have a default prescription on board as soon as the patient is there for the first 2 days, which can have a little hypocaloric supplements, but subsequently you need to go close to 80% or 100% of the energy expenditure. And protein have a default prescription which starts off at 1.2 to 1.3 but then goes on up to 2 grams. And if the patient is on RRT, you need to supplement another 0.2 grams per kg or so. Let me finish by just referring you to the papers. How to feed a patient with AKI. This is Marlies Osterman and ETNA. Most of you must have met both of them when you were in Hyderabad for AKI meetings. They are here every year, and they have done a beautiful job of putting up all the rationale and the recommendations one by one in patients with AKI and those with general ICU patients, including calories, protein, and vitamins and trace elements. This is the other paper, again from Marlies' unit. They looked at their patients over a period of 1 year and saw what was their micronutrient level in the blood and also in the dialysis effluent, and they concluded whether the patient is on RRT or not. You should be considering supplementing micronutrients to these patients, because all these ICU patients had a loss of B1, B6, B12, vitamin C, D, folate, selenium, zinc, copper, iron, carnitine, and many other things that they have prospectively looked at in these patients. This is a paper, nutrition support in critically ill patients with AKI, from our own cohort of patients. This is by Dr. Ramakrishna's group in Chennai. Very crisp and very useful for day-to-day practice. And finally, this year, 2021, ESPEN guidelines on clinical nutrition, published in Clinical Nutrition, talk about entire list of do's and don'ts, which I think I can skip because it is more like what we have just discussed, including the term of protein allergy, malnutrition, different dialysis modalities, what happens to nutritional parameters. Only thing different would be they did talk about the futility of giving specific things, including omega-3 fatty acids. There is not enough evidence to support routine use of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids in AKI, AKD, CKD, even with dialysis requirement. And similarly, they have asked us not to consider using glutamine, which is done in many of the units. So to conclude, if you have a critically ill patient, please look at the comorbidities, what is happening on that day. And the Marlies data clearly talks of 45% of people who come to you already have established malnutrition. Carefully look at what is the comorbidities and inflammation and the disease-related malnutrition, which can be already there, then which also sets in the minute you start the patient on any form of therapy. So keeping this in mind, you should consider a default prescription to be on board in your unit and then modify it over the next 24 to 48 hours. Thank you very much.